Welcome everybody, and today we are going to talk about the glazing finish that we applied for the Prohibition style Monterey bar for issue 257. So what you need to start off is, of course, your raw wood, which constitute the material for your project. A couple other items over here. Our base coat is a red milk paint. Our sealer coat, we went ahead with just a water-based high gloss performance stain from General Finishes just to kind of stay in the family. And then of course we have our glaze effects in pitch black here. I've also got a couple foam brushes to apply the glaze. I have a couple rags over here to wipe stuff back. But to start off, the glazing effect was used heavily during this period to create kind of a distressed or kind of old world finish. Typically glazes are used to accentuate carvings or fluting on spindles, sunburst designs. They can even be used to create faux impressions or like faux wood finish on pieces of plywood or even softer hardwood. So there's several different applications that you can use and a lot of different varieties of ways to kind of manipulate the glaze to kind of do what you want. What's unique about the glaze effect is that you are floating a finish basically in between two other finishes. So you don't apply it to a bare wood like you would with a typical either oil-based stain, whether it be gel or liquid-based stain. Even if you're doing something where you want to retain the kind of the color of the raw wood, what you want to do is put a lacquer or a sealer coat on top of there, and then you would put your glaze color on top. So it's different and a little bit different than using, we'll say, a toner, which is applied more like a lacquer or a tinted lacquer. So to kind of emulate the old red or old world red used for the Prohibition style bar, we wanted to keep it as straightforward as possible. So again, we stuck with all water-based products. We did go ahead and spray the red paint on just because of the sheer size of the project. Of course, we have the capability. If you don't, you can go ahead and brush it, which honestly may be preferred if you are really trying to have the paint or the glaze really fill in the grooves and anywhere where you have like a framing panel or a detail, again, to really accentuate those individual characteristics of it. But for the sake of display, we just have some flat panels here. We've got one here with just the red paint already applied. Again, I went ahead and used a foam brush. We just sanded it to 120. Again, if you want the paint or the glaze to really kind of fill into those imperfections, you could even use a lower grit, like an 80 grit or 100 grit. Again, there's a lot of different ways that you can manipulate or change the way you want this glaze to apply. So again, for the sake of the demo, we went ahead and put one coat of the clear finish on as our sealer coat. Again, if you wanted to put more for a smoother finish, you can. The nice thing about the glaze as well as other than the stain is once you put a stain on, it's almost kind of semi-permanent. It's a lot harder to get off, short of removing a lot of material. The stain itself really soaks into the fibers where this floats on the top. So you have as much time as you possibly need short of it drying on the surface, so you can really wipe back as much as you want. With that said, let's go ahead and apply some of the glaze onto our pre-existing piece. I'm going to go ahead and just apply it with the foam brush. You can use a bristle brush, you could even use a rag. I'm choosing just to use the rags to wipe them back and the brush to apply it. So since you do have a little bit of texture on your wood, I would go ahead and apply it in both directions. And depending on how pronounced you want your glaze to be, that can be changed and or dictated again by how much you wipe back. But again, to get a nice even coat, I would work both directions of the grain just to make sure to get a nice even coverage. So working my way down. Drying time is also crucial too. So this is definitely a process that will take a little bit of an experimentation up front. So cut yourself several test pieces so that you can again just get the desired effect that you like for your piece. So all I'm really doing here is just kind of excessively going over it just to allow it to dry a little bit and just kind of accelerate the drying time of this. Again, once you have full coverage though, you can let it dry for a little bit. You can get right after it like a gel stain where you want to wipe it back right off the bat. If this were paneled, You'll notice once you start wiping, you'll start to get buildup out in those corners. And of course on the actual piece where there's details on the legs, we've got aprons, the drawers, there's a lot more opportunity for the stain or the glaze to really soak into those areas or voids. So I'm just working with the grain. Of course, you can work against it. And it's all just kind of contingent on how you want it to look. I usually like to finish in the direction of the grain. And if you're doing a larger piece like the Prohibition bar, it helps to maybe have a partner to help wipe the stain back. If you're not in a real hurry, you can just do a section at a time, which is probably preferred. But you'll start to notice again that the glaze starts to pick up in some of the imperfections or grooves left behind by the staining. If you're applying the finish, whether it be the oil or the water-based stuff we have, or a lacquer finish, depending on how you apply it, you can create, again, a little bit more pronounced grooving in there. But really, it's just a lot of experimentation with these. But that's ultimately how you go about the glaze effect. And now once this dries, I would go ahead and put a couple coats, if not 3 coats of your finish. What you use as your sealer coat will now become your finishing coat. If you go ahead and spray your piece, a lot of times with milk paint or acrylic paint, you'll want a lot of times cut it with water. Again, just to dilute it a little bit so it just sprays a little bit more evenly. If you're doing that, I would go ahead and let it sit for about 24 to 48 hours just to make sure that that milk paint or latex paint dries fully. If you go ahead and put your clear coat on or your sealer coat on before it's dry, you'll start to get a crackling effect, which if that's what you desire, you can go ahead and do that. But again, I would say a solid 24 to 48. If you're brushing, it'd probably be closer to a day. And then of course, when you go ahead and apply the sealer coat on, I would just go by the recommendation of the back of whatever you end up using. So it's a pretty simple process. Again, there's a lot of experimentation involved that gets some pretty unique results. But again, we've consolidated it down in just 4 steps. So you've got your top coat, you've got your sealer coat, 1 or 2 coats, the glaze effect that you go ahead and wipe back, and then of course your 2 to 3 coats of finish. And it's that simple. Thanks for watching.